Kweli, yeah. Hey.
Pre-hip-hop, what kind of music were you listening to? What kind of was like your first music you were really getting into as a kid?
As a child, I was basically into what my father was into, which was, he was a DJ in college, so he collected a lot of records like jazz and R&B, or just every single type of record he collected. So there was a vast amount of music in my house, from 60s soul to 80s pop, and I soak all of that music in. I like all different types of music.
For sure. And so, do you remember that certain moment when you discovered hip-hop or this new form of music? What was that point that you really found out about the culture?
Well, you know, living in New York City, hip-hop is in the fabric of the city. So it's something that's around you whether you're into it or not. And I got into it really in junior high school. Maybe it was when I really started being creative inside of hip-hop.
Okay. You kind of, one thing you're known for in lyrics is having lyrics of substance. Some might say conscious rap or whatever. Was that like early on as an MC, or did that come later? Was something in your life that made that happen to make you take that route? Or, you know, what was the beginnings like getting to that road of the more substance of lyrics?
I think, you know, just for hip-hop, people usually rap about, you know, regional issues or your region and your emotional experience make up your content. And, you know, with me, how I grew up and the type of person I am, you hear that in my music. There's other rappers who are just like me as a person, but they rap as more violent or more gangster. But it's as a result of some sort of emotional experience that they had that I couldn't speak to that because that's them, you know.
For sure. When you first came in the game, you know, a lot of stuff we heard, your first like lyric song was Beats by High Tech. And that was sort of like the foundation. How did you know when you met High Tech that he was the one to lay that foundation for you, and how did you guys connect in the first place?
Yeah, High Tech is one of my favorite producers. I think he's one of the best to ever do it. My roommate when I was in college was a dude named Devon. He was from Cincinnati, Ohio. And I went to visit him and some of his friends, and he was friends with a group called Mood out of Cincinnati. And High Tech was working with Mood a lot, and I just fell in love with his sound. And I kept calling him for months, calling him and saying, yo, we gotta do this group. I already had this idea for the group, Reflection Eternal, but I didn't have one producer. You know what I'm saying? I had my homeboy who was down with me, who was DJing, but I wanted a sound for that group, and High Tech embodied that sound.
Speaking of production, that can be something that can make or break an album. And so what are some of the pros and cons between like doing a whole album with High Tech, Reflection Eternal, or doing your own album with the different producers? Are there any pros and cons in that process, or how you do it differently?
Yeah, I mean, working with one producer is a lot of great classic hip-hop albums have been done with just one producer. But at the same time, me, as a musician, I hear different sounds, and I always challenge myself continually to put out an album with different producers and try to make it gel. That's one of the most fun experiments for me and one of the best challenges. Certainly the albums I've done with High Tech, the 2 albums I did with High Tech, the album with Madlib, you know, I have say-so over choosing the tracks, but essentially I relinquish control of the music to them when I do that. And that's comfortable. And it's dope, and the fans love it. But it's more of a challenge for me to try to do it on my own.
Got you. Going beyond just the MC part, you also have Blacksmith. Can we talk about what made you want to do that? Was that like a natural progression to want to go to the label side of things? Or was it sort of the results of the changing industry and kind of feel like it was necessary to do so?
Yeah, I think that the idea to have a label, a Blacksmith, is based on the fact that the business model and the way that I moved through this business, I've been able to stay afloat, and regardless of the trends, I'm able to still put out music and tour and do record appearance signings and stuff like that. And I wanted to be able to extend that that sort of model to other artists that I love, like Jean Grey, who's gonna be performing tonight, and Strong Arm Steady, and hopefully other artists. Once these projects, you know, bear their fruit, you know, I want to work with as many artists as possible.
And with that in line, as a talent scout, A&R, what attracts you to an artist? What kind of things do you look for when you're looking for an artist for Blacksmith? What stands out to you?
What stands out is someone who is ambitious enough to do it on their own. The thing that Gene and Strong Arm have in common is one, the relationship was already there, so these are people who I knew from just being active in music. But the consistency and the being prolific, actually producing, not just saying I do music, but Jean Grey and Strong Arm Steady are two acts that you would have been hearing about whether or not they work with me or not. And that's what's attractive to me.
In your own career and also with the career of others, what are some of the pros and cons or some of the things you've done to navigate in today's changing market, like the use of social media or free music versus, you know, declining sales? What are some of how you dealing with all those things as a label?
I think you gotta pay attention to all of it. You gotta pay attention to the trends, but not follow them. You know, but you have to know what you're up against, and you have to know what the market bears right now, and you have to know who's making money in music and who's not, and what's working and what's not, and you have to pick and choose what works for you. You could say that you want to be on Twitter all day, but if you don't have the personality to just be tweeting whenever, it is going to come across as bland and lame, and maybe you can focus your energy on doing something that's more suited to your personality. You know, everybody has different personality types, and different things work for different artists. How an artist like MF Doom moves is very different than an artist like will.i.am. But they both come from the same seed. They both started as love and hip hop, and they just have two different ways of expressing that, and two very different but successful ways of running a business.
For sure. New album. We'll talk about how that came about and like some of the the standout points in that album. Putting together, Gutter Rainbows.
Yeah, Gutter Rainbows came about because I didn't have a deal at the time, and I loved in my professional career, I had never not had a deal. So I used that freedom to create this album and put it out myself with the help of 3D, Buckshot, and Drew House Company. You know, we put it out, and it's been a great process for me.
Last question, going to the crowd next to be ready with some questions. I want to ask you about, a lot of people now, a lot of artists in the world trying to make music and come up. Any advice you would give to upcoming artists on how to build a career and not relying on labels in this market? And also, what are some of the key mistakes you might see artists make in trying to come up? Anything stand out like they should do better?
As far as giving out advice, you know, this might sound strange, but I think up-and-coming artists are in a better position to give me advice, you know, because I came out in a time where you could still maybe sell a record or two. You know, people, when I was coming out, hip-hop fans were very upset at a Nelly or Puff Daddy. But what they didn't realize was these artists were so successful at what they did for a living that, you know, a rising tide raised all boats, and the industry had a lot of cash, and labels could take a chance. Raucous Records spent a lot of money. That's the part people don't want to talk about. People romanticize what we did with Raucous. Oh, Raucous was underground, it was indie, it was a movement, it's so great. No, they spent millions of dollars to present. It was Fox News Corporation gave Raucous money, and they spent that money to present themselves as an indie company, which is why Mos Def and myself and Pharoah Monch and certain other Raucous things got pushed like major projects, and that's because of all the money that was being made in the industry. Now, that doesn't exist anymore at all. There's no money being spent on successful artists. You could be Kelly Rowland from Destiny's Child, you get dropped. You know what I'm saying? Like, they just dropping whoever. You know, so your history don't matter in this business anymore, and there's no more money being spent in it. So at this point, it's like the Wild Wild West. It's like the gold rush. It's like you have to challenge yourself to find new avenues to make money. I'm blessed because I came out a few years ago, so I have a fan base. Like, if I continue to do shows and put out quality albums, a certain amount of people are always going to support what I do, based on not just the quality of my music, but based on all that marketing and promotion Raucous spent 10 years ago. You know what I'm saying? So now it's even harder, and I look towards younger artists, whether it be like, you know, a Wale, or whether it be like a Odd Future, or whoever. Like, I look towards and see what people are doing and apply that to what I do. You know, but I'm blessed to have a fan base to experiment with. A lot of artists is making or breaking.
Questions from the crowd? Anyone got a question out there? Come a little closer, get the mic so we can hear it nice and clear, make sure he hears it.
Good afternoon, sir.
How you doing?
My name is Dante, and I know of a brother who wrote this play. This play is entitled Word, the Urban Musical. It's being done for the Minnesota Fringe Festival. And what it is a play about the last hip-hop and R&B radio station in the country. And the actual satire behind it is basically the social inequality, the satire that goes behind what people honestly feel about hip-hop. My question to you is, or at least how this play is being said, do you think like his social commentary about how radio is being done today in terms of hip-hop, do you think that's very relevant, or is it hurting or helping? What's your opinion on that?
I think I would have to see the play or read it to really comment on what he was trying to say. But, you know, radio is something that can blow you up very easily. But people, I think, overstate its importance in today's day and age. The radio still has a huge impact in urban communities and poor, oppressed communities. They're not really going on blogs to get the newest, latest mixtape for free. They're still listening to the radio. But they're not purchasing that music. You know, so you hear a song 3,000 times on the radio, and so what? No one's buying that album. So, you know what I'm saying? So there's still a certain amount of influence, but it's only as much influence as you give it. You know, and turning off the radio is easy. You know, it's like it's real easy. And that's what I encourage people to do who do get upset about radio or even images on TV, is that if you turn it off, people around you will be affected by that. You don't have to look at it. You know?
I can get a play for you if you like.
Sure.
Hello. First, I want to say thank you for the type of music that you put out. So I have a two-part question. First, I wanted to know, have there been any times where you felt a lack of motivation, even after establishing a fan base? And my second question is, what have you done to find that motivation?
Yeah, there's always times when I find lack of motivation, but there's so many aspects to what I'm doing as a career that if I find lack of motivation to write, I'm on the road. Or if I find lack of motivation to be on the road, I'm trying to put out music through Blacksmith. So I do go through that, but I have so many things on my plate that I'm busy myself, that if one aspect feels like it's weighing too heavy or stressing me out, I can move on to the next thing and focus on that.
It's really nice to actually get a chance to meet you. You know, I've been a big fan of your music for a while. It's gotten me actually through some tough spots. I'm in graduate school at the U, and I'm in a Department of Asian Languages and Literatures, and so as you can imagine, there's not a whole lot of folks that look like me there. And so it's good to be able to have some positive hip-hop music to listen to on my walk to campus. But to that end, I like what you've had to say thus far about the way in which you de-romanticize a lot of this mythology that arises about an underground and about independent labels and whatnot, and the way in which you sort of take an iconoclastic stance against that. And but that raises the question to me of matters of authenticity in hip-hop in the first place. You know what I mean? It's so, almost to me, I would say that the discussion is rather detrimental in the sense that people want to get into debates about, oh, this is real hip-hop, oh, this is not real hip-hop. And in reality, I mean, it really demolishes the whole industry. Well, not demolishes, but you know, it takes us all down a bit because it just makes us look like we're infighting. So if you could speak to issues of authenticity directly, I'd be, you know, like, good, yeah.
Yeah, I think that that question is bigger than hip hop, because when you talk about hip hop, you talk about an art form, and I think that the job, well, I know that the job of an artist, the number one job of an artist is to be honest. That's it. You know, like that's the number one job. And if you stop being honest in your art, that's when your fan base either says he fell off, or he's sold out, or I liked his old stuff. You know what I'm saying? And so if your job is to be honest and you're growing and changing, your job is not to raise somebody's kids, or your job is not to be positive, your job is not to speak on what's going on in the community. That's not your job description. It would be nice if you did it, you know, and if you're a person who's a grown person and you have knowledge, whether you're an artist or a garbage collector, it's your responsibility as a human being to impart whatever knowledge you have. That's something that exists outside of art. It's blown up in the world of art because artists have bigger platforms and can speak to more people, but you can't really hold people accountable for things they don't know. And I'd be willing to bet the artists that know some, they let you know as soon as they know, you know? That's when you hear growth in an artist. So I think as far as authenticity, whatever, being authentic, is what are you talking about? Are you talking about as a person who's responsible to the community, or are you talking about as an artist? Because there's a lot of artists that have negative messages, but they're still very authentic artists, you know?
All right, my question is, nice to meet you, bro.
How you doing?
I got the quality right here. Hopefully I can get this signed. All right. But my question is, do you plan on doing another Black Star record?
There's no immediate plans, but we're doing a lot of shows on tour, and we have a lot of records we recorded, so we're figuring it out.
I'm wondering if maybe you could just list off maybe a couple of books you've read recently, or maybe even a couple of authors that have been significant, or that you just, I don't know, like to express. Interested in that stuff.
Yeah. Recently I read a book by my favorite author, Talib Kweli, called The Zaire. It's about love and marriage and relationships, but written from the perspective of an author, who's also a celebrity. Which is I guess it's a first-hand experience for this guy. But he wrote The Alchemist, which is one of my favorite books ever. I'm actually reading a book right now called The King of the Jews, about Arnold Rothstein, who was a gangster in New York from the 30s. But it's told, the book starts from like Mesopotamia, and from the start of like Semitic people, and goes all the way to Arnold Rothstein. It's a great book by Nick. I can't say his last name. It starts with a T. And I'm reading. I just finished reading Matla's book from the Clips, which is a very interesting read. It's called Wretched, Naked.
Wretched, poor, pitiful,
Poor,
blind,
pitiful, and naked. And check that out.